Alright, today's project is we're going to work on these beautiful patent leather Christian Louboutin shoes. These are classic pumps. These have never go out of style. Now, the customer wore the hell out of them, and we're going to see if we can bring that back. Now, patent leather is kind of difficult to bring back when it's not noticeable after the repair. Once that surface breaks, it's difficult to bring it back to make it flawless that's not visible that there was a problem. Now, we do have an option where we remove this heel, replace the cover with new patent leather, but this time we're not going to do that. Basically, what we're going to glue and re-dye as best as we can and clean it up. And then we're going to do some thin rubber soles on the bottom. Now, there's several options when it comes to soles. This is basically a product called Casale. This is an Italian product where obviously it goes on the bottom of the shoe. Now, some people like this because it's got that shiny gloss just like the original, so it's kind of good flaw when it gets done. But I think we're going to use something else this time. This has a little better grip. This is called Svig, S-V-I-G. It's a Crispino pattern. Now, again, we're going to basically just notch it right there and replace that. This is a little bit thicker because this is worn down so much. I think this will be okay once this comes on top of it. It'll be very nice when it's finished. Now, this particular one, the toe, she wore that down quite a bit. So I'm going to have to build that up a little bit until the shape of the soles was original. Then we can put the sole on there. Now, most of the time when these shoes come in, they're new to fairly new. Something like this, which is not in bad shape. Just the color is worn off. Now, remember, this is leather. This is dyed leather. So you wear that once or twice, that color is going to show like this. When these rubbers, soles here, they're red throughout, so you're not going to lose that color when you keep on wearing them. All right, so let's get started. All right, first things first, I'm going to start by removing the pin on the lift. Now, sometimes these are going to be a pain in the ass because there's a tube inside the heel, that is, this heel, literally a tube, and then this little pin gets inserted inside. See that pin right there? Sometimes that pin breaks into that hole. If it does, it's a pain in the ass because you got to re-drill that out so the new pin can fit in there. Now, most of the time, whenever you do sole guards, sole protectors, they're all the same. Now, there's lots of different ways people do it. Ultimately, when you put sole guards on, so when you're viewing the shoe from this angle, you're not really supposed to see it come up this high. So, but unfortunately, she's worn this down so far to that level, I'm going to have to bring it back as best as I can. So I think about right here would be good. Now you can do a curved line, you can do a straight line, you can do whatever you want. This is just aesthetics. I like the curve, it gives it a little more elegant look. Now this is just a paper pattern we're going to cut the soles out of. So approximately right here, we're going to bring it down. It's a little bit lower than what I normally do, but unfortunately, you see the wear pattern, it's going to have to be able to cover that area. We're going to add a little piece of leather right here to extend that so we can be ready to put the sole on. And everything else you're seeing here, we'll glue that down, we'll flatten that little marks, the little nicks down as best as we can, and we'll take it from there. This is what these come in sheets, basically. We cut them down to whatever. I mean, they come in pre-cut also, but I like to get them in sheets and cut them to whatever length I need, whatever size works best. Now the curved pattern on the shank area, it's a little bit more difficult to do than the straight line. But it seems that most jobs that come through, I like to do a little bit more difficult and a little more details. I don't know why. but I think it just gives it a better, a little more elegant look to the waist area when it gets done. So I'm going to cut this. We're going to sand that a little bit to give it a little bit more of a curve so the edge is nice and finished. Alright, let's continue. We sanded that toe down a little bit. Now these are just skived pieces that are leftovers from other jobs. Basically what I'm going to do here, I'm going to hammer this leather piece down and kind of crush the fibers to make it tighter, so it'll work good for that toe piece that we're going to put on there. Now it's nice and tight. What happens with leather is that when it gets wet, it absorbs the moisture like a sponge. So if the fibers are kind of dense, they're tight, it's not going to absorb moisture as much, therefore it's going to last longer. Now that leather skiving piece I have is from a JR Leather sole. If you've never heard of JR Leather, it's one of the leading leather companies in the world. Their leather is very dense. It takes over 12 months to tan these leather soles. Therefore, it's very durable. So sometimes it's small pieces that I'll save for projects like this. Alright, so once we got that on there, let's mark the sole. Now some people they'll put tape across here and then they'll mark it and they cut it. You can do that. I mean, there's lots of different ways of doing it. Something like that. Just right at the wear pattern, right on the corner, so I think it'll work out alright. Alright. Alright, so now what we do is basically, we don't want to just put the leather on top of the sole and have that thick edge right there. We want to try to make the seam as flawless as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to sand that edge about halfway through, okay, to kind of taper the edge. And then we're going to do very similar on the sole. We're going to cut it and notch it out, so when the sole comes in, it'll be almost butting against each other and it'll be flawless on top. It should be anyway. So you got to be very careful here because it's a sharp knife, it's a nice expensive shoe, and you don't want to end up buying the customer a new pair of shoes. Now in some of my other videos, people say your hands shake a lot. Well, I do. My hands do shake a little bit. But then most of the time when I'm videotaping, I usually have too many of those, and it kind of makes the shaking a little bit more. But I assure you, I'm very careful when it comes to customers' work, that nothing gets messed up. I mean, am I perfect? No. It happens sometimes, but try not to mess things up so the customers can notice what's going on. Minor things we can hide and make it better. But thank God nothing has been done to a point where I can't say, I can't take care of a problem. So something like this, okay? You're not cutting through all the way, just a little bit, just to kind of get a ditch in there so the sole can sit in. All right, so once we glue this on, we'll sand that, and then we'll glue the sole on. All right, let's continue. Now this is my special last right here. It's basically shape of excuse me. It's a basically shape of the I lost my voice. Shape of the shoe. It's just a matter of putting this on here. Okay, we'll cut the excess off, we'll trim it. Once the sole comes on there, you'll never know that toe piece was added on. Alright, let's continue. Now, before I do any sanding, I always want to protect the shoes so I don't damage the uppers. Again, sometimes on smooth leathers, if there's a little nick or a scratch or something, we can kind of buff that out, sand it a little bit, and make it better. But when it comes to patent leathers, forget it. You can't hide anything in patent leather. It's just too obvious that if there's a damaged surface, you're not going to be able to hide it as well. So this will basically protect it. Sometimes I'll do a double tape. Again, I don't want to take any chances of damaging the shoe. But at times I look at the way these shoes are worn, and I think I care more about the shoes than some customers do. But anyway, it's all right. That's what they're here for. We'll fix them up and make them look better. All right, so let's continue to do that. This way, when I'm trimming the edges, nothing gets hit on the uppers, and that'll be protected. All right. All right, so we've got the sole sanded, a piece in there. Okay. Now we've got the sole, sand it down, taper it on the edge. Now what I'll do is on the rubber here, this is turpentine, by the way. Now there's a lot of residue left on this, like dust and the oils from my hand and dirt. I'd just like to wipe this across here to get rid of all that dirt. So what happens is that the glue has a better chance of it adhering to the shoe when there's less contamination on there. So, all right. I'm using all-purpose cement. Now again, sometimes people will put that tape across the shank area, cut it, and glue it, and remove the tape, so there's no excess glue on the sole itself, original sole. But what happens sometimes. If I get a little extra on there, just clean it up. No big deal. But it is a time saver to do that. Some people do that. I do that sometimes too, but I didn't do it this time. So we're just going to let this cure for a little bit, maybe about 10 minutes or so. And once it's semi-dry, we'll go ahead and attach the sole to the shoe. All right, let's continue. All right. So just basically, you want to line that up. With the pattern on the shoe. Now I heated up the rubber sole guard just a little bit, so a little bit more pliable. I try not to pull this too much, because what happens is that if you pull it, it's going to stress the shank area. So just kind of glue this down like this here, and then maybe pull it just a little bit as you're gluing it. Not too much. If you pull it too much over time, that material is going to have, it has a memory, and it'll want to kind of go back to where it was. Now make sure you get all the air pockets out of the edges. So basically we're going to let this sit for a few minutes, let it cure a little bit, dry, and then we'll go ahead and cut it and trim it. You can cut it now, but just let it sit, it's okay. We've got some time. And then while that's drying, we can work on the heel. A little bit of glue on the torn areas. And once that's dry, we can see if we can maybe add a little bit of color to it to try to blend that in as best as we can. Again, with patent leather, man, I wish that I mean, there are some products out there it's made for patent leather to kind of, you know, cover it, to give it that shine again, but it's just not the same as if it was, you know, nothing there. You can't really hide it. So be careful with your patent leathers. We can try to do the best we can on the budget that, you know, that we have. Again, the other option is to recover that heel. That's quite, you know, it's costly, and it's not an easy job. Unfortunately, not too many people do it. I do some. I don't do too many of them, but only when the customer really insists on it looking like there was no cut or you know, torn areas. All right, let's continue. Okay, now these are called the dowels. Okay, basically they go into that tube that is inside the shoe. I'm trying to find a tube that I can show you what it looks like. Well, this is a shorter version of the tube, but it's just a tube, a metal tube that goes all the way inside the heel. Obviously, the bigger the heel, the longer the tube. And basically, these dowels gets inserted into that right there. Now you got to be careful with these. There are so many different sizes of the stem, thin, thick. So basically, I normally cut that in half, and you got to be careful when you're hammering it. If you hammer too much, you're going to get dimples on the top where the metal is, where the heel is going to get damaged, and it's not going to last too long. Now it's got to be snug enough for it doesn't come off, and it can't be too tight where you're going to damage that. I know it's just a little piece of rubber, right? But there's a lot of little details that go into it. Now sometimes, well, most of the time, you have to trim this heel, the lift that you just put on, the size of the actual heel itself, because sometimes we get lucky, we find the exact same size, we put it in, you don't have to do anything to it at all. So as you see, it's getting there slowly but surely. All right, let's continue. All right, so it looks a little rough at this stage, but slowly it's becoming better looking. So once we finish the edges, we sand it. I put some edge dressing on there. Now we're going to start cleaning up and adding some little dyes here and there to try to bring the uppers back a little bit. Now first I use a little bit of water to wipe things down. It's just a spray bottle of water. Just basically wipe the shoe down. Again, I'll use a little bit of turpentine to remove what the water didn't take off. Now, there's home remedies out there that you can use. Some people use Pledge. Some people use Windex. Banana peels. I don't know. Use whatever works and doesn't mess anything up. See, just that is bringing the shoe back. See, he's cleaned that up real nice. Now we have a little product that we use. It's a foam spray that that cleans the surface up pretty good. Make sure to take the excess ink off the bottom. We don't want that to be dirty, even though she's going to walk on it, but still, I don't care what she does after I get done with it. Try to keep it as clean as possible. Alright, so let's continue. Alright, we're done with another project. This is just the sheepskin that I have. I buffed that. Works real nice on patent leathers. Now, you still see the marks on there, right? I mean, it's difficult to get rid of all that to make it 100%, but it's better than what it was. The toe's a little bit scuffed still. So when you're looking at it visually like this, you see the seam? You're not really supposed to see that, but again, the wear pattern was we had no choice but to bring that up as high as we could. So it's not too bad. Now I know some of you guys are going to ask me how much this cost. This particular one was $200. Normally, sole guards and heels on Christian Louboutin shoes, they're about $120, but I can tell you that all jobs are different. For example, the nude colors, if it's scratched up, it needs to be touched up, re-dyed. You can't just polish these up. You have to apply color to it. Same color, you can't change the color. So it takes a little bit more time to get done. So every job is a different price. So just to give you a ballpark, that's what it starts from. All right. Oh, somebody was asking me about my espresso cup holder. I made this because this is my favorite cup. And the damn handle broke like 3-4 times. I glued everything back together. Finally, I couldn't salvage it. So I made this little contraption here. All right. Thanks for joining me, guys. And we'll see you again next time. Take care.